Welcome back to Partnerships Unraveled, the podcast where we dive deep into the mysteries and secrets of partnerships and the channel. My name is Michel. I'm head of marketing at Chanext, and I'll be your host for today. And I'm excited to sit down with Eltjo Hofstee, Global Sales Director at EasyDMARC. Eltjo, how are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me in the podcast. Really enjoy that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this one. And we were just discussing RSA and CloudFest. I think you were at CloudFest. I was at RSA, but at least I saw a lot of EasyDMARC polos. So you're gaining some notoriety in this field.
Definitely. No, and we're trying to attend a lot of these kind of events. And both CloudFest and RSA are important events for us. So that's why we decided, although it was this year in the same week, to do both.
Yeah, they should think about that a little bit better, I think, for the next time, because I know that my flight to RSA was filled with 100% cybersecurity people from the Netherlands. Anyway, it's something to take a look at next year, but really great to have you here with us. Could you give us a quick introduction about yourself, your business?
Yes. So my name, as you mentioned, is Eltjo Hofstee, based in the Netherlands, close to Amsterdam. And I work now for EasyDMARC for almost 4 years, a bit less. And when I had the first discussions with EasyDMARC, from day one, the goal was to build a scalable sales organization. Once I got a little bit more information about the company, I noticed that we had a very strong product market fit. We just had to scale up marketing and sales. So that was the request to me. Quite soon after I joined, we started with an SDR team, qualifying leads. We started with a customer success team. And quite soon after, we also started with an MSP channel. And that's also a big part of today's discussion, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think what I keep hearing from everyone I talk to is that scaling is partnerships. It's the only way to scale these types of solutions. So let's kick off the conversation with a good hard look at these MSPs. So when you look at the MSP landscape, many MSPs still measure their value in terms of uptime, SLA, service delivery, things like that. And as the market shifts, I'm hearing more and more that this model is kind of going the way of the dinosaur. It's disappearing slowly. Do you agree? And where do you think this model is going?
Yes, I definitely agree. And before I answer your full question, and maybe it's good for the audience to explain a little bit what EasyDMARC is doing. EasyDMARC is offering an outbound email security solution, which basically means that we are protecting emails that are sent from your domain. And we help MSPs to offer a solution to the end users to protect the domain. But, and here comes part of the answer, we also help them in how to offer this to their customers. So how to find customers, how to sell it. But not only a DMARC solution, we have several solutions that really help them finding new customers. And we strongly believe that that's the kind of model the MSP world is heading towards as well. So more results driven and less in terms of things like uptime, SLAs, whatever. Because it's nice that the email server has 100% uptime, but if all emails end up in the spam folder, the end customer still doesn't get a real solution. SLA is met, customer is still unhappy. And I think that's the real value of an MSP, to not only help the customer in telling him, hey, your email server is always up, to just give that example, but to really help, how can I help your marketing and sales in sending out the right emails and making sure that they end up in the inbox.
It's funny that you say this, because I would almost classify uptime and SLAs in this context as vanity metrics. And as a marketeer, I hear this quite a lot, and I've been involved with these as well. And I'll never forget, I once had a CEO who said to me, we need more leads. And I said, what does that mean? Because leads aren't opportunities. Opportunities aren't closed won. Like, what are you actually looking for? He said, no. I committed to the board 6,000 leads this quarter. And I said, but the volume really isn't the problem. It's the conversion quality. And he said, no, I want 6,000 leads. So what I did is I went into our analytics dashboard and I clicked on accept non-corporate email addresses. Bam, I had 6,000 leads within a week.
You didn't help him.
I didn't help him. They meant nothing. And I think that the reality of what we're looking to achieve, like you mentioned, outcomes driven, is so much more valuable to all of us because it requires a mindset shift. Obviously, it requires us to be a little bit more honest with each other. But at the end of the day, that means better results and easier measurability. So I think that's a really nice kind of path forward.
Fully agree. And I now gave the example of email because I'm in the email space, but this is actually applicable to everything. If you're an MSSP and you're only concerned about security, why do you give an uptime of a firewall or a security solution? Why don't you say, hey, you pay me based on the real security that you receive?
Yeah.
So
What's the
you can do
firewall
this.
blocking? Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed. I think that's a way better way of offering it than just in terminology of SLAs and service delivery.
Yeah, I fully agree, and this lines up with something that stuck out to me during our prep call. You think that MSPs are evolving into MIPs, and MIP is not just the acronym for my favorite rosé, but an acronym for Managed Intelligence Providers. Now, what does that shift actually look like, and what new expectations does it create for partners?
Yeah, well, very much what we just discussed. The terminology, at least I heard it for the first time from Pax8, one of the marketplaces that we use to sell to our MSPs. And they are a very strong advocate of the idea that MSPs have to move into managed intelligence providers. It's a concept that has several ideas, basically. But one of the things is that it should be more result driven, what we just discussed. But that also means that the MSP or the managed intelligence provider of the future should have more data and more understanding of what is really a value driver for the business, because only then he can really help him. So that's why they call it a managed intelligence provider, and I very much support that idea, because if you have more data of your customer, and normally you do have that as an MSP, you can really come proactively to the end user and say, hey, we constantly see that your emails are going to the spam folder. Or maybe even a step further, you can even say, well, based on the data that we have from you, we can see that the amount of leads is less converting than 2 years ago. What's the problem? And we have an idea already what the problem is. Maybe your emails are going into the spam folder. Just eh? So that way you become, and that's where the terminology comes from. That way you become a managed intelligence provider, because you sit on as an MSP, you really sit on a big bunch of data, and you can leverage that to really help your MSP a step further.
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. And it also aligns with the actual normal colloquial definition of what a partner even is, right? A partner is not a one-way street. A partnership is a relationship. And I think this fits so nicely into that paradigm. And it's because if we have that data, why not share it and basically become better together? I'd
I
put it that
fully
way.
agree. And when we started the MSP proposition for EasyDMARC, in the beginning, we were very much focused on offering a DMARC solution to the managed service providers. And of course, we're still doing that. But in the meantime, we really shifted away from that, because it's way more important that they have a partner that not only just offers them a DMARC solution, they get so many solutions offered. You can't really stand out from the competition that way. No, it's important that they have a partner that also helps them in how to sell DMARC and how to sell other services as well, and where to find the right leads. And we've built a full program around that. And that goes way further, in my opinion, than just another DMARC vendor.
I completely agree, and I think this segues very nicely into another topic that's really interesting here, and that is email in general. Um, Email is obviously treated as basic infrastructure, but I think that's only because it's so incredibly common to our daily lives we barely even think about it anymore. But in reality, being so common means that it requires really high degrees of security, trust, communication, performance. What lessons are you learning from being in the email space when it comes to where MSPs are heading?
What we really see, and that's also if every email that an end user sends out when DMARC is set up generates an XML report, and we receive all those reports. And what we can really see is that MSPs are setting up more and more domains, and therefore they get more and more insights basically in what the customer, their end user, is doing with email. And in many cases, they find new sources. For example, the end user himself even didn't know that marketing is using a certain SaaS tool. So they get way better visibility over the email infrastructure. DMARC wasn't meant that way, basically. It was really to secure email, but we now see that IT departments and MSPs get much better visibility over what is actually really the real email infrastructure of their end user. And because they have so much better insights, they can way better advise the end user in what to do.
One of the things you said really, really stuck with me at the beginning of this conversation, that you're talking about how EasyDMARC focuses on outbound email protection. Um, and it's something that seems so logical when you say it, but I'd personally never really thought about that before. Now, I think that a lot of smaller companies will probably have a similar perspective, right? They might assume that they're too small or too obscure to be impersonated. In psychology, I think this is called the normalcy bias, when people basically think, why would anything bad happen to me? Like, I'm not special. Do you have any anecdotes or experiences that tell a different story?
Yeah, actually, two things here. Almost every customer or end user that we help online with DMARC, the moment that they set everything up, they realize, oh, I'm actually constantly being impersonated. Everybody says,
Really?
I'm too small and whatever. The bigger ones don't say that, but a lot of small end users think, oh, I'm just a bakery or something really not so much focused on the internet business. But once they set up DMARC, they suddenly see the real threats, and that's always a lot more than you think you have. And another nice example, when I joined, EasyDMARC at that time was still relatively a small company, and we had constantly people trying to impersonate also our address. Yeah, we were protected by DMARC, so it
You
wasn't
drink your own
possible.
champagne.
But we definitely drink our own champagne, and but we could already see how many threats our domain received. So yeah, I think that's a good example.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that normalcy bias really plays a part here, right? Because if you think about it, normal people, they win the lottery every day. So there's no reason why bad luck wouldn't operate in the same way. And just from my perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think smaller companies might even be easier to target because they're less
Yes.
prone to have controls in place. They might have a higher degree of trust with their suppliers or buyers.
Yeah, and you mainly hear about the large attacks with Jaguar Land Rover in the UK or Odido in the Netherlands. Sorry for mainly European examples, but those are the ones that you hear a lot about in the news. But small companies are constantly under attack as well. You just don't hear it so much in the news.
Yeah, and I think that that's really also a mindset shift, right? That cybersecurity is something that everybody needs, and I think a lot of again, a lot of companies might not think that they're big enough or important enough or interesting enough to be cyber attacked, but they are. You know, ransomware as well, that happens to small companies, right? Because it's actually much easier to get them to pay up.
It's much easier. Maybe you can't ask the millions that you can ask at a big company, but if you do 10 times a small company, you also have several millions probably. So, no, that definitely happens. And we see it on a day-to-day base that the moment that people set up a domain with DMARC, they see how many times there someone is trying to impersonate their domain.
Yeah, does that scare them?
Yes, normally people are in shock about it. Yes. Yeah.
I can imagine. I think it's similar to the first time you get one of those messages. It's like your password has been found in 1,200 hacks, right? That kind of stuff. Thank God for multi-factor authentication and passkeys, right?
Yes, thank God for that. And yeah, I also don't like the fact that that maybe someone else might have my passport details. Yeah, I'm pretty sure someone has, and that doesn't feel secure. Yeah,
Yeah. To be fair, maybe I should stop using password 1 2 3 4. But we'll talk about
you're
that
using that
another
as well. I always
day.
use welcome 01. That's my
Yeah, yeah,
basic.
that also works.
Yeah. Works very well. Yes.
Talking a little bit about EasyDMARC's solution, right? I think there's an interesting challenge for any vendor with a reasonably priced but high functioning product. If it works quietly in the background, it can be pretty easy to overlook. I actually recently talked to a multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity firm about exactly this, but then in the context of protecting their brand awareness when their product is often white labeled by their partners. So for EasyDMARC, how do you stay relevant and top of mind with your partners over time?
Yeah, very good question. And actually, I get this question quite often. And we basically have two phases. Once a customer starts using us, or directly or through the MSP, first you need to move him to a protected mode. That takes some time. You need to gather data, whatever. So there, our platform really helps to move the customer as quick as possible to the secure mode. But once you're in that stage, you still want to receive alerts. If suddenly the amount of impersonation goes up, you definitely want to hear that there's a threat going on, because in many cases that can be an indicator that there are also other threats going on, and that could be an early warning system. Second of all, a lot of our MSPs have now integrated the data that they receive from a DMARC, the DMARC information data they receive through us. They have integrated that with something like Microsoft Sentinel or Splunk. So they gather that data into a broader to get a broader view of the security level of a specific end user. So even after you move to reject policy, you still need alerting. You still need to get visibility. Who's trying to impersonate you? And you also want to have that visibility. Maybe marketing is suddenly using a new SaaS tool and sending out emails with a different tool or whatever. And then you want to be the early warning system, basically, as an MSP, that you can go to your end user and say, hey, are you realizing that we see that you from now on you're using a different tool, but those emails will never get into the inbox because they're all rejected because the source isn't set up correctly. So as an MSP, you definitely want that proactive mode, I would say, towards your end user. And to do that, you basically need constant monitoring and alerting to be able to advise your customer in the right way.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I realize that there's one thing we haven't talked about yet. And seeing as you were at CloudFest and I was at RSA this year, we probably saw one word, or actually two letters more often than any other word. AI came up more than cybersecurity, trust, or whatever. I saw it was actually hilarious driving into San Francisco that every billboard had the word AI on it. So I just want to ask, especially when it comes to this kind of stuff, threat detection, is there anything specific that EasyDMARC is doing with AI at the moment that's really moving the needle?
Yes, quite a few things actually. From a pure technical point of view, you can say that all non-DMARC compliant emails are one bucket, but with smart AI, we basically detect, hey, this is a legitimate source and this is really someone impersonating you. And that makes a huge difference because we can categorize them differently. It makes a huge difference in how quickly you can set up DMARC using our platform. But we also use it a lot in sales. We use it a lot in marketing, in our support. So yes, we are heavily using AI already. Yes.
Yeah, I think especially in this space, it's incredibly valuable. I wonder, just being a bit of a nihilist, when the AI models are going to start clashing with each other, like inbound and outbound. I heard a company at RSA say that they basically said they block everything. That's their USB. We don't care if it's good or bad. We block everything and we figure it out later. And I think that's really interesting to see how this kind of stuff will work when outbound and inbound start to kind of mesh together when it comes to AI models. But that's a conversation for, I think, maybe our second podcast, Eltjo.
Definitely. And let's be honest, if you see how many emails you nowadays receive that are clearly written with AI and they try to sort of make it personal, but it does still feel a bit artificial,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. But yeah, you can clearly see that we're getting there, but we're not there yet as society, I would say. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. It's so nuanced, right? And I experienced the same with you can probably talk to this even much better than I can about sales methodologies. When you look at something like challenger sale, right, or solution selling, it's a very logical way of structuring a conversation with a potential client. But if you start to use it very literally, it becomes incredibly transparent. And I recently had someone on a sales call. They cold called me and they were having this conversation. And I said, okay, what does your product do? I was like, fine, I'll listen to you. It's okay. And he said, no, no, no. I don't want to talk about the product right now. I want to talk about what challenges you have. And I said, nope, I want to know about your product.
Yeah,
Because
well,
the whole point is that you have to apply it organically. And I think that's the same thing with AI. If people feel like it's artificial, that's going to have a net negative effect, right? So I think
I
that's a
agree.
really, really important point.
Yeah, no,
And
I fully agree. Yeah.
yeah, words of wisdom to live by. Eltjo, this has been great. We always do ask our guests to invite the next guest on the podcast. So who do you think we should have next?
Yeah, my recommendation would be, and we work quite often with him, and it's a fantastic guy. It's Matt Lee from Paxate. He's Senior Director of Security and Compliance at Paxate, and he's a real security guy. He comes from a heavy security background, and he can not only speak about email security, he has a bit of a broader view than EasyDMARC in that sense. But what he can do very nicely is to explain security issues in a very simple way, so that also less security-minded audience can still understand what it's about. And I definitely recommend you to contact him, and I can also give you an introduction of.
That would be absolutely fantastic. And I think it's so important, especially in the cybersecurity space. When I was walking around RSA, I was asking people to explain their business to me like I was 5 years old. And what you notice is that many people do actually struggle with that. And I think that's because we get so entrenched in our industries that we feel like everything is, to use the Dutch word, vanzelfsprekend, like readily apparent, right? But to many people, even within the industry, some things might not be as clear. So to present these concepts simply, it actually helps everyone.
And that's very much his strength. Yes.
Oh,
I've
I
seen
can't
him
wait.
doing that with several audiences, and it works very well. Yeah.
Amazing. I'll definitely get in touch with him. To wrap this up, do you have any final insights, tips, or tricks that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, as I think as an MSP, it's quite interesting time, to be honest, and probably this it has always been interesting because the market is always shifting. But I really believe now that you have more and more subscription models for all kinds of tooling, that the role of an MSP changes and he becomes more and more a trusted advisor and less the guy doing everything.
Mhm.
And in that sense, I strongly believe in the Pax8 idea of managed intelligence provider. If you really want to add value to your end customer, you should become a real proactive advisor of your customer and not just the company fixing a few laptops or something like that.
I think those are definitely words to live by. We have to continue to look forward, and I think MSP should definitely do the same because if they win, we all win, right? That's the nice thing about a partner first methodology.
Correct. I fully agree. Yeah.
I love it. Eltjo, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and taking the time to speak with me. And for you, dear listeners, thanks for tuning in and see you in the next episode. Thanks, Eltjo.
Thank you very much.